Hello, hello, welcome in. Yes, Mira Mushi Ch and all the fun things. Welcome to our big catch-up reading stream because it has been, I'd say it's been about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks since we actually read last. So today we will be starting back up with The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Andersen. I couldn't remember if it was that or Snow White. So yes, The Emperor's New Clothes. But I'm really excited. I actually found another book. It's called The Gray Fairy Book by Andrew Lang. And it is a... No, I gotta go back to the website. The Gray... Oh. There we go. It's called The Gray Fairy Book by Andrew Lang, and it's a collection of fairy tales derived from various cultures composed in the late 19th century. This anthology features enchanting stories from Lithuania, Africa, Germany, France, Greece, and more, showcasing the diversity and richness of folklore. Prominent themes include love, magic, adventure, and transformation, and characters often facing challenges that lead them to personal growth and enlightenment. At the start of the collection, the preface introduces the origins of these tales, emphasizing their cultural variety and the art of storytelling. The first tale, Donkey Skin, narrates the story of a beloved king who, after the loss of his wife, is compelled to marry again, but only if he finds a woman more beautiful than her. His adopted daughter, fearful of marrying him, seeks the help of her fairy godmother, leading to a series of magical and clever challenges, including dresses made of the sky, moonbeams, and sunshine. The narrative explores themes of identity, the struggle against unwanted fate, and the ingenuity of the protagonist, setting the tone for the whimsical and moralistic adventures that follow in subsequent tales of the collection. So I'm really excited. We might do that one next week, actually. And sorry, I'm not sure how many tales are left in this collection here. Probably another 2, maybe 3. Yeah, 2 or 3 stories, sorry. So, and I did forget something. So give me just a second, I gotta grab my water. Here we go. Water ASMR. So, before I forget, my name is Mira Mushi, and welcome to Somnium. I am your Dream Siren, and today we will be doing our weekly reading struggling to get itself together this morning for some reason. It's also a rainy day here today, so it's the perfect day to be cozy and just throw something on in the background and get comfortable and go to sleep. Take a nap, relax, turn your mind off. And for those who are new here, when we do our reading streams, I try to catch back up on any messages that I've missed at the end of the reading. So please don't feel discouraged if I don't reply to your message right away. It's just out of courtesy to not disrupt the flow of the story. I'm going to check one more thing with my mic. Is it that? I've been trying to continue to do sound testing to figure out why the mic is like randomly peaking. But I can't pinpoint what it is just yet, so I hope that my voice is loud enough to be heard. No, I actually I forgot I was gonna move another way and see if that actually makes a difference, but we'll deal with that for this way for today. But I hope the middle of the week is going well and that you are tackling your things as best you can. My dear, dear dreamers. Let's get in a couple of sips of warm coffee and see if that might help as well to warm up our voice a little bit. I really enjoy, I think this might be my favorite of our background music. And I think about using it for our gaming background because it's not as, it's not as excitable, but it's still, I like the repetition of it. I don't feel like I notice that it's been playing over and over again, which to me is a sign of a really good background music. So all right. Let's see if that warms up my voice a little bit. And we'll be taking our breaks at the drop of the sweet chibis on the screen, even if it hasn't been an hour. It's just a good reminder to not overwork, not do too much, but still do your best. So let's get started. Again, we're going to be reading The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Andersen. So please relax and enjoy. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so excessively fond of new clothes that he spent all of his monies on them. He cared nothing about his soldiers. He cared nothing about his soldiers, nor for the theater, nor for driving in the woods, except for the sake of showing off his new clothes. He had a costume for every hour in the day, and instead of saying, as one does about any other king or emperor, he in his high council chamber, here one always said, the emperor is in his dressing room. Life was very gay in the great town where he lived. Hosts of strangers came to visit and every day, and among them, one day, 2 swindlers. They gave themselves out as weavers and said that they knew how to weave the most beautiful stuffs imaginable. Not only were their colors and patterns unusually fine, but the clothes were made of the stuffs had the particular quality of becoming invincible to everyone who was not fit for the office he held, or if he was impossibly dull. Those must be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. By wearing them, I should be able to discover which men in my kingdom are unfitted for their post. I shall designate the wise men from the fools. Yes, I certainly must order some of that stuff to be woven for me. He paid the 2 swindlers a lot of money in advance, so that they might begin to work at once. They did put up 2 looms and pretend to weave, but they had nothing whatever upon their shuttles. At the outset, they asked for a quantity of the finest silk and the purest gold thread, all of which they put into their own bags, while they worked away at the empty looms far into the night. I should like to know how those weavers are getting on with the stuff, thought the emperor. But he felt a little queer when he reflected that anyone who was stupid or unfit for his post would not be able to see it. He certainly thought that he need have no fears for himself, but still he thought he would send someone else first to see how it was getting on. Everybody in the town knew what wonderful power the stuff possessed, and everyone was anxious to see how stupid his neighbor was. I will send my faithful old minister to the weavers, thought the emperor. He will be best able to see how the stuff looks, for he is a clever man, and no one fulfills his duties better than he does. So the good old minister went into the room where the 2 swindlers sat working at the empty loom. Heaven preserve us, thought the old minister, opening his eyes very wide. Why, I can't see a thing, but he took care not to say so. Both the swindlers begged him to be good enough to step a little nearer, and asked if he did not think it is a good pattern and beautiful coloring. They pointed to the empty loom, and the poor old minister stared as hard as he could, but he could not see anything, for of course there was nothing to see. But heavens, thought he, is it possible that I am a fool? I have never thought so, and nobody must know it. Am I not fit for my post? It will never do to say that I cannot see the stuffs. Well, sir, you don't say anything about the stuffs, said one who was pretending to weave. Oh, it is beautiful, quite charming, said the old minister, looking through his spectacles. This pattern and these colors, I will certainly tell the emperor, and that the stuff pleases me very much." "We are delighted to hear you say so," said the swindlers, and then they named all the colors and described the particular pattern. The old minister paid great attention to what they said, so as to be able to repeat it when he got home to the emperor. Then the swindlers went on to demand more money. More silk and more gold to be able to proceed with the weaving. But they put it all into their own pockets. Not a single strand was ever put into the loom, but they went on as before weaving at the empty loom. The emperor soon sent another faithful official to see how the stuff was getting on, and if it would soon be ready. The same thing happened to him as to the minister. He looked and looked, but as there was only the empty loom, he could see nothing at all. "Is not this a beautiful piece of stuff?" said both the swindlers, showing and explaining the beautiful pattern and colors which were not there to be seen. "I know I am not a fool," thought the man, "so it must be that I am unfit for my post. It is very strange, though. However, one must not let it appear." So he praised the stuff he did not see. He assured them of his delight in the beautiful colors and the originality of the design. "It is absolutely charming," he said to the emperor. Everybody in the town was talking about this splendid stuff. Now the emperor thought he would like to see it while it was still on the loom. So, accompanied by a number of selected courtiers, among whom were the two faithful officials who had already seen the imaginary stuff, he went to visit the crafty impostors who were working away as hard as ever as they could at the empty loom. "It is magnificent," said both the honest officials. "Only see, your majesty, what a design, what colors." And they pointed to the empty loom, for they thought no doubt that the others could see the stuff. "What?" thought the emperor. "I see nothing at all. This is terrible. Am I a fool? Am I not fit to be emperor? Why, nothing worse can happen to me." "Oh, it is beautiful," said the emperor. It is my highest approval." Then he nodded his satisfaction as he gazed at the empty loom. Nothing would induce him to say that he could not see anything. The whole suite gazed and gazed, but saw nothing more than all the others. However, they all exclaimed with his majesty, "It is very beautiful," and they advised him to wear a suit made of this wonderful cloth on the occasion of a great procession which was just about to take place. "It is magnificent, gorgeous, excellent," went from mouth to mouth. They were all equally delighted with it. The emperor gave each of the rogues an order of knighthood to be worn in their bottom holes, and the title of gentlemen weavers. The swindlers sat up the whole night before the day on which the procession was to take place, burning 16 candles so that people might see how anxious they were to get the emperor's new clothes ready. They pretended to take the stuff off the loom. They cut it out in the air with a huge pair of scissors. And they stitched away with the needles without any threads in them. At last they said, "Now the emperor's new clothes are ready." The emperor, with his grandest courtiers, went to them himself, and both the swindlers raised one arm in the air as if they were holding something and said, "See, these are the trousers, this is the coat, and here is the mantle," and so on. It is as light as a spider's web. One might think one had nothing on, but this is the very beauty of it. "Yes," said all of the courtiers, but they could not see anything, for there was nothing there to see. "Will your imperial majesty be graciously pleased to take off your clothes," said the impostors, "so that we may put on the new ones along here before the great mirror?" The emperor took off all his clothes, and the impostors pretended to give him one article of dress after the other of the new ones, which they had pretended to make. They pretended to fasten something around his waist and to tie on something. This was the train. And the emperor turned around and around in front of the mirror. How well his majesty looks in the new clothes. How becoming they are, cried all the people round. What a design and what colors. They are the most gorgeous robes. The canopy is waiting outside, which is to be carried over your majesty in the procession, said the masters of the ceremonies. Well, I am quite ready, said the emperor. Don't the clothes fit well? And he turned around again in front of the mirror so that he should seem to be looking at his grand things. The chamberlains who were to carry the train stooped and pretended to look at it from the ground with both hands, and they walked along with their hands in the air. They dared not let it appear that they could not see anything. Then the emperor walked along in the procession under the gorgeous canopy, and everybody in the streets and at the windows exclaimed, "How beautiful the emperor's new clothes are! What a splendid train! And they fit to perfection." Nobody could let it appear that he could not see nothing, for then he would not be fit for his post, or else he was a fool. None of the emperor's clothes had been so successful before. But he has nothing on, said a little child. Oh, listen to the innocent, said its father. And one person whispered to the other what the child had said. He has nothing on. The child says he has nothing on. But he has nothing on, at last cried all the people. The emperor breathed, for he knew it was true. But he thought, the procession must go on now. So held himself stiffer than ever, and the chamberlains held up the invisible train. The end. I wonder if that's sometimes where that saying, the show must go on, comes from. That would actually rather make a lot of sense. Alright. Next in line in our books from Hans Andersen, The Wind Tale, about Waldemar Daa and his daughters. Wow. When the wind sweeps across a field of grass, it makes a little ripple in it like a lake. In a field of corn it makes great waves like the sea itself. This is the wind's frolic. Then listen to the stories it tells. It sings them aloud, one kind of song amongst the trees of the forest, and a very different one when it is pent up within the walls, with all their cracks and crannies. Do you see how the wind chases the white fleecy clouds, as if they were a flock of sheep? Do you hear the wind down there, howling in the open doorway like a watchman winding his horn? Then, too, how he whistles in the chimneys, making the fire crackle and sparkle. How cozy it is to sit in the warm glow of the fire, listening to the tales it has to tell. Let the wind tell its own story. It can tell you more adventures than all of us put together. Listen now. Far away. That was the refrain of his song. Close to the great bell stands an old mansion, which is with thick red walls, says the wind. I know every stone of it. I knew them before when they formed part of the Marsk Stake Castle on the Ness. It had to come down. The stones were used again and made a new wall of a new castle in another place, Borreby Hall, as it is now stands. I have watched the high-born men and women of all the various races who have lived here, and now I am going to tell you about Waldemar Daa and his daughters. He held his head high, for he came of a royal stock. He knew more than the mere chasing of a stag or the emptying of a flagon. He knew how to manage his affairs. He said himself. His lady wife walked proudly across the brightly polished floors. In her gold brocade kirtle, the tapestries in the rooms were gorgeous, and the furniture of costly carved woods. She had brought much gold and silver plate into the house with her, and the cellars were full of German ale. Where there was anything, there was all. Fiery black horses neighed in the stables. Borreby Hall was a very rich place when wealth came there. Then there were the children, 3 dainty maidens, Ida, Johanna, and Anna Dorothy. I remember their names well. They were rich and aristocratic people, and they were born and bred in wealth. Whew. Whew. Fare away, roared the winds, and then he went on with his story. I did not see here, as in other old noble castles, in the high-born lady, sitting among her maidens in the great hall, turning the spinning wheel. No, she played upon the ringing lute and sang to its tones. Her songs were not always the old Danish ditties, however, but songs in foreign tongues, all with light and hospitality. Noble guests came from afar and wide. There were sounds of music and the clanging of flagons, so loud that I could not drown them, said the wind. Here were arrogance and ostentation enough to spare. Plenty of lords, but the Lord had no place there. Then came the evening of May Day, said the wind. I came from the west. I had been watching ships being wrecked and broken up on the west coast of Jutland. I tore over the heaths and the green wooded coast, across the isles of Funen and over the great belt puffing and blowing. I settled down to rest on the coast of Zealand, close to the Borreby Hall, where the splendid forest of oaks still stood. The young bachelors of the neighborhood came out and collected faggots and branches, the longest and driest they could find. These they took to the town, piled them up in a heap, and set fire to them. Then the men and maidens danced and sang around the bonfire. I lay still, said the wind, but I softly moved the branches, the one laid by the handsomest young man, and his billet blazed up highest of all. He was the chosen one. He had the name of honor. He became buck of the street. And he chose from among the girls his little May lamb, all with life and merriment, greater far than within rich Borreby Hall. The great lady came driving towards the hall in her gilded chariot drawn by 6 horses. She had her 3 dainty daughters with her. They were indeed 3 lovely flowers, a rose, a lily, and a pale hyacinth. The mother herself was a gorgeous tulip. She took no notice whatever of the crowd, who all stopped in their game to drop their curtsies and make their bows. One might have thought that, like a tulip, she was rather frail in the stalk and feared to bend her back. The rose, the lily, and the pale hyacinth, yes, I saw them all 3. Whose May lambs were they one day to become, thought I. Their mates would be proud knights, perhaps even princes. Whew. Whew. Bear away. Yes, the chariot bore them away, and the peasants whirled on in their dance. They played at riding the summer into the village, to Borreby village, Tarby village, and many others. But that night when I rose, said the wind, the whole noble lady laid herself down to rise no more. It came to her which comes to everyone. There was nothing new about that. Waldemar Daa stood grave and silent for a time. The proudest tree may bend, but it does not break, said something within him. The daughters wept, and everyone else at the castle was wiping their eyes, but Madame Daa had faded away, and I fared away too. Whew. Whew. Said the wind. They came back again. I often came back across the island of Funen and the waters of the belt, and took up my place on Borreby shore, close to the great forest of oaks. The ospreys and the wood pigeons used to build in it, the blue raven, and even the black stork. It was early in the year. Some of the nests were full of eggs, while in others the young ones were just hatched. What a flying and screaming was there! Then came the sound of the axe, blow upon blow. The forest was to be filled. Waldemar Daa was about to build a costly ship, a 3-decked man of war, which it was expected the king would buy. So the wood fell, and the ancient landmark of the seamen, the home of the birds. The shriek was frightened away. Its nest was torn down. The osprey and all the other birds lost their nest too, and they flew about distractedly, shrieking in their terror and anger. The crows and the jackdaws screamed in mockery. Waldemar Daa and his 3 daughters stood in the middle of the wood among the workmen. They all laughed at the wild cries of the birds, except Anna Dorothy. She was touched by their distress, and when they were about to fell a tree, which was half dead, and on whose naked branches a black stork had built its nest, out of which the young ones were sticking their heads, she begged them with tears in her eyes to spare it. So the tree with the black stork's nest was allowed to stand. It was only a little thing. The chopping and the sawing went on, and the 3-decker was built. The master builder was a man of humble origin, but of noble loyalty. Great power lay in his eyes and on his forehead, and Waldemar Daa liked to listen to him, and little Ida liked to listen too, and the eldest 15-year-old daughter. But whilst he built the ship for his father, he built a castle in the air for himself, in which he and little Ida sat side by side as man and wife. This might also have happened if his castle had been built of solid stone, with moat and ramparts, wood and gardens. But with all his wisdom, the shipbuilder's was only a poor bird. And what business has a sparrow in the crane's nest? Phew. Phew. I rushed away, and he rushed away, for he dared not stay, and little Ida got over it, as get over it she must. The fiery black horses stood neighing in the stables. They were worth looking at, and they were looked at to some purpose too. An admiral was sent from the king to look at the new man of war, the view to purchasing it. The admiral was so proud of his admiration of the horses. I heard all he said, added the wind. I went through the open door with the gentleman and scattered the straw like gold before their feet. Waldemar Daa wanted gold. The admiral wanted the black horses, and so he praised them as he did, but his hints were not taken. Therefore, the ship remained unsold. There it stood about the shore, covered up with boards, like a Noah's ark which never reached the water. Phew. Phew. Get along. It was a miserable business. In the winter, when the fields were covered with snow, and the belt was full of ice floes, which I drove up onto the coast, said the wind. The ravens and the crows came in flocks, and the one blacker than the other, and perched upon the desolate dead ship by the shore. They screamed themselves hoarse about the forests which had disappeared, and many precious birds' nests which had been devastated, leaving old and young homeless, and all for the sake of this old piece of lumber, the proud ship which was never to touch the water. I whirled the snow about till it lay in great heaps around the ship. I let it hear my voice and all that a storm has to say. I know that I did my best to give it an idea of the sea. Phew. Phew. The winter passed by, the winter and summer passed away. They come and go just as I do. The snowflakes, the apple blossom, and the leaves fall, each in their turn. Phew. Phew. They passed away as men pass too. The daughters were still young. Little Ida the rose, as lovely to look at as what the shipbuilder turned his gaze upon her. I often took hold of her long brown hair when she stood lost in thought by the apple tree in the garden. She never noticed that I showered apple blossoms over her loosened hair. She only gazed at the red sunset against the golden background in the sky, and the dark trees and bushes of the garden. Her sister Johanna was like a tall, stately lily. She held herself as stiffly erect as her mother, and seemed to have the same dread of bending her stem. She liked to walk in the long gallery where the family portraits hung. The ladies were painted in velvet and silk, with tiny pearls embroidered caps on their braided tresses. Their husbands were all clad in still, or in costly cloaks lined with squirrel skins and stiff blue ruffs. Their swords hung loosely by their sides. Where would Johanna's portrait one day hang on their walls? What would her noble husband look like? These were her thoughts, and she even spoke them aloud. I heard her as I swept through the long corridor into the gallery, where I veered round again. Anna Dorothy, the pale hyacinth, was only a child of 14, quiet and thoughtful. Her large blue eyes, as clear as water, were very solemn, and her childhood smile still played upon her lips. I could not blow it away, nor did I wish to do so. I used to meet her in the garden, the ravine, and in the manor fields. She was always picking flowers and herbs, those she knew her father could use for healing drinks and potions. Waldemar Daa was proud and conceited, and he was also learned and also knew a great deal about many things. One could see that, and many whisperers went about as to his learning. The fire blazed in his stove even in summer, and his chamber door was locked. This went on for days and nights, but he did not talk much about it. One day must deal silently with the forces of nature. He would soon discover the best of everything, the red gold. This was why his chimney flamed and smoked and sparkled. Yes, I was there too, said the wind. Hello, dear. I just thought about taking a 5-minute break. May I join for 5 minutes, please? You absolutely can. Though we're not at a stopping point for reading. Well, actually, I guess we're about to take a little break, so we'll have a moment of pause. So for the bookmarking and the reading, we're taking a little break shortly before the 11 o'clock hour. It's almost an hour in. How are you, dear? How are your studies? Also, I hope that my reply helped you with your question. Wait a minute. Good. Oh, I'm happy for you. Good job, good job. Very good. Mm. Sorry. And that must be a relief as well that you did good. I'm happy. As I'm taking a 5-minute break, so please, today let's talk, and then you can have a break. We can talk for about 5 minutes, and then I'll take a break. But yeah, it is a reading stream, so we usually don't like to break up the reading because then it disturbs the recording when people go back to look at the pod. But we'll give you a couple of minutes since we're getting ready to take a break anyway. How are you today? My voice is so soft today, so I hope it's coming across clearly. No. We're gonna I'll talk to you for a couple of minutes and then we're gonna take a break anyway. And then we'll get back to reading. So you joined at the perfect time. Yeah, I don't mind taking a little 5-minute chat. Because I wanted to see how your testing and stuff is going either way. So thank you for letting me know. And I'm happy that you did well on your exam. So, how did you feel? Like, it feels like I'm 10 years away. 10 years away. What? You know, you feel lonely. I don't ever really feel lonely. I enjoy and I'm thankful for your company or anyone's company that's here. I think that's more how it feels on my end. Yeah. I think more of a stance of like being grateful for people when they show up. Oh my gosh, I'm so sleepy. I didn't come yesterday, so you felt lonely. Yes, I know. No, smoochies. I did give you a smooch actually. So yeah, we did. What did we do for stream yesterday? Actually. Oh yeah, we played mahjong, but only for a little bit because I had a pretty bad headache, so we only streamed for. Oh my gosh, it's the rain. It's making me so tired. We only streamed for like an hour and a half. It was a very short stream. No, you felt lonely. No, please don't tell me how I feel, but I am happy to see you today. But if you mean like, did I miss your presence yesterday? I did. I didn't expect you to be there though, because it was not during the earlier 10 o'clock streaming, and I'm trying to think if you have been there for a late stream. You have. I think, yeah, you have, because we originally started with the evening streams. So we go back and forth between the two. I actually like streaming in the night, but I'm also very sleepy at night too, so it's like it's kind of difficult to stream at night. If that is because of me, you didn't play much. You did miss my presence. No, it was more the horrible headache that I had. And now I'm just really sleepy today because it's rainy and I went to get cozy by a window and put some music on and read a book, which we're doing, and listen to the rain all day. I'm sleepy. Well, not so much like sleepy, like tired, but more just like really relaxed, I guess would be a better way of saying that. I feel very, very relaxed. Oh, I just looked at the clock. Oh my gosh, that 5 minutes went by so quick. Alright, I am going to do a short takeaway. Oh yeah, I needed to put the throwing. I need to add that really quickly. My my lovely mod was talking about that yesterday as well, about the adding more of the emotes or the emoji to show like the patterns. There we go. To trigger the events. Oh no, why can't I use that pattern? Can I use any of it? Oh, you can't use any of it. Darn. I wonder why. I know, I saw it. It was the fastest policy. That's okay. Let me close this for now. I have to come back and do that later. But I hope that you do well on your studies today. And thank you for coming. But you're watching me. I'm not gonna do anything silly. I'm gonna go take a quick break and then we're gonna come back every second. I'm not doing anything. Alright. I'm gonna take a quick break and then we'll go back to reading, okay? And I'm really proud of you. I revised some of the theorems. Okay, you'll have to send it to me. I have to get back to your messages today as well. But let me go because now we're going like too long. Alright. I'll see you very long later. Yeah, we'll see how long we're able to read today. My voice is... Please. Okay, I do need to add the crying. The crying emote. Oh. You're like my little reminder for a lot of various things, which I appreciate. But I also wanted to do these things online, which this is really not the best stream for it, but why do I have to? I need to go back and have some more emotes made, actually. Okay. I'm sorry for the disruption in the reading. I actually might edit this part out. It's so long, I feel bad. Wait, Oh, after the 17th. What? What? Oh, I can't physically pat you, but good job. You did a very good job. Here, I will give you hearts. Good job, good job, good job, good job, good job. I am taking care of myself. I'm not doing a good job taking care of the stream flow right now, though. But, okay, break. Good job, good job. Go back to your work. My I was just about I was just about to tell you, please. You have got to stop trying to take my sicknesses away. I don't want you to get sick. How many times do I have to tell you? Your dreams are very important and you can't go taking other people's yuckies so that because what happens if you get sick? Don't do it. But I need to go spend some time with let us meet up again, okay? Honey, go away, please. And sorry if you felt sad because I said no. It's okay. I just have fun and don't forget. I do miss you when you're not here. Not my fault. I was writing a heartfelt message, but I was late. No, you can't. You can't take my sickness. That is the one thing we have to agree on. You can take good things. You can take inspiration, but not sickies. And be safe wherever you're going and have fun with physics. Yes, yes, yes. All right. There is only one sweet little May, and they are the sweetest. I'll see you soon too, dear. And stop trying to take people's sickies. All right. I was also debating while we were taking a break if I wanted to. There's this game that just recently came out by the name of Grimoire Grove. And it's this cute little like roguelike game. And it looks really cute. And the main character has pink hair. And there's lots of plants and magical forests, and it kind of reminds me of some of our Somnium lore. So, depending on how we feel tonight, I might do a second late evening stream because it just came out yesterday, I think. Or we might play it on Friday, but I'm like very excitingly wanting to play it. So I feel like if I wait till Friday, then I might play it on my own. Yes, I was still talking. But you go, and I'm going to go back to reading the book. Because I don't want you to be late, because that's more important than your school stuff. But please do be safe, okay? You're not taking care of yourself. I will admit I haven't been hydrating as much there. That's my confession for you. All right, where were we? Okay. Away with you, away. I sang in the back of the chimney. Smoke, smoke, embers and ashes. This is all it will come to. You will burn yourself up in it. Those are my wind sounds, by the way. Away with it. But Waldemar Daw could not let it go. The fiery steeds in the stables, where were they? The old gold and silver plate in the cupboard and chest, where was that? The cattle, and the land, and the castle itself? Yes, they could all be melted down in the crucible, but yet no gold would come. Do good, do good, do good. tuka, tuka, tuka. Huh. Barn and larder got emptier and emptier. Fewer servants, more mice. One pane of glass got broken and another followed. There was no need for me to go in by the doors, said the wind. The smoking chimney means a cooking mill, but the only chimney which smoked here swallowed up all the mills, all for the sake of the red gold. I blew through the castle gate like a watchman blowing his horn, but there was no watchman, said the wind. I twisted round the weathercock on the tower, and it creaked as if the watchman up there were snoring, only there was no watchman. Rats and mice were the only inhabitants. Poverty laid the table. Poverty lurked in wardrobe and larder. The doors fell off their hinges. Cracks and crannies appeared everywhere. I went in and out, said the wind, so I know all about it. The hair and the beard of Waldemar Daw grew gray, and the sorrow of his sleepless nights amid smoke and ashes. His skin grew grimy and yellow, and his eyes greedy for gold, the long expected gold. I whistled through the broken panes and fissures. I blew into the daughter's chest, where their clothes lay faded and threadbare. They had to last forever. A song like this had never been sung over the cradles of these children. A lordly life became a woeful life. I was the only one to sing into the castle now, said the wind. I snowed them up, for they said it gave warmth. They had no firewood, for the forest was cut down where they should have got it. There was a biting frost. Even I had to keep rustling through the crannies and passages to keep myself lively. They stayed in bed to keep themselves warm, those noble ladies. Their father crept about under a fur rug. Nothing to bite and nothing to burn. A lordly life indeed. Whew. Whew. Let it go. But this was what Waldemar Daw could not do. After winter comes to spring, said he. A good time will come after a time of need, but they make us wait their pleasure wait. The castle is mortgaged. We are its extremities, and yet the gold will come at Easter. I heard him murmur to the spider's web, You clever little weaver, you teach me to preserve. If your web is broken, you begin at the beginning again and complete it. Broken again, and cheerfully you begin it over again. This is what one must do, and one will be rewarded. It was Easter morning, the bells were ringing, and the sun was at play in the heavens. Waldemar Daw had watched through the night with his blood at fever pitch, boiling and cooling, mixing and distilling. I heard him sigh like a despairing soul. I heard him pray, and I heard that he held his breath. The lamp had gone out, but he never noticed it. I blew up the embers, and they shone upon his ashen face, which took a tinge of color from their light. His eyes started in their sockets. They grew larger and larger, as if they would leap out. Look at the alchemist's glass. Something twinkles in it. It is glowing pure and heavy. He lifted it with a trembling hand and shouted with a trembling voice, Gold! Gold! He reeled, and I could easily have blown him over, said the wind. but I only blew upon the embers and followed him to the room where his daughter sat shivering. His coat was powdered with ash, as well as his beard and his matted hair. He drew himself up to his full height and held up his precious treasure in the fragile glass. "Found 1 gold," he cried, stretching up his hand with the glass which glimmered in the sunbeams. His hand shook, and the alchemist's glass fell to the ground, shivered into 1,000 atoms. The last bubble of his welfare was shattered too. Phew. Phew. Fare away, and away I rushed from the goldmaker's home. Late in the year, when the days were short and dark up here, and the fog envelops the red berries and bare branches with its with its cold moisture, I came along in a lively mood, clearing the sky and snapping off the dead boughs. This is no great labor, it is true, yet it has to be done. Borby Hall, the home of Waldemar Daa, was having a clean sweep of a different sort. The family enemy, Ove Ramel, from baseness, appeared holding the mortgage of the hall and all its contents. I drummed upon the cracked window panes, beat against the decaying doors, and whistled through all the cracks and crannies. Phew. I did my best to prevent her Ove taking a fancy to stay there. Ida and Anna Dorothy faced it bravely, although they shed some tears. Johanna stood pale and erect, and bit her finger till it bled. Much that would help her. Ove Ramel offered to let them stay on at the castle for Waldemar Daa's lifetime, but he got no thanks for his offer. I was listening. I saw the ruined gentleman stiffen his neck and hold his head higher than ever. I beat against the walls and the old leaden trees with such force that the thickest branch broke, although it was not a bit rotten. It fell down the gate like a broom, as if someone was about to sweep, and a sweeping there was indeed to be. I quite expected it. It was a grievous day and a hard time for them, but their wills were as stubborn as their necks were stiff. They had not a possession in the world but the clothes on their backs. Yes, one thing, an alchemist's glass, which had been bought and filled with the fragments scraped up from the floor, the treasure which promised much and fulfilled nothing. Waldemar Daa, hid in his bosom, took his staff in his hand, and with his 3 daughters, the once wealthy gentleman walked out of Borby Hall for the last time. I blew a cold blast upon his burning cheeks. I fluttered his gray beard and his long white hair. I sang such a tune as only I could sing. Whew. Whew. Away with them, away with them. This was the end of all their grandeur. Ida and Anna Dorothy walked on each side of him. Johanna turned round in the gateway. But what was the good of that? Nothing could make them their luck turn. She looked at the red stones of which had once which had once been Marskig Castle. Was she thinking of her daughters? The elder took the younger by the hand, and out they roamed to a far-off land. Was she thinking of that song? Here there were 3, and their father was with them. They walked along the road where once they used to ride with their chariot. They throde in now as vagrants. on their way to a plastered cottage on Smidstrup Heath, which was rented at 10 marks yearly. This was their new country seat, with its empty walls and its empty vessels. The crows and the magpies wheeled screaming over their heads, with their mocking caw, caw, out of the nest, caw, caw, just as they'd screamed in the Borreby forest when the trees were felled. Erda and his daughters must have noticed it, and blew into their ears to try and deaden the cries, which after all were not worth listening to. So they took up their abode in the plastered cottage on Smidstrup Heath, and I tore off over marshes and meadows, through naked hedges and bare woods, to the open seas and other lands. Phew. Phew. Away, away, and that for many years. What happened to Waldemar Daa? What happened to his daughters? This is what the winds relate. The last of them I saw, yes, for the last time, was Anna Dorothy, the pale hyacinth. She was old and bent now. It was half a century later. She lived the longest. She had gone through everything. Across the heath, near the town of Viborg, stood the Dean's new handsome mansion, built on red stone with toothed gables. The smoke rolled thickly out of the chimneys. The gentle lady and her fair daughter sat in the bay window, looking into the garden at the drooping thorns and out of the brown heath beyond. What were they looking at there? They were looking at the stork's nest on a tumble-down cottage. The roof was covered, as far as there was any roof to cover, with moss and house leeks. But the stork's nest made the best covering. It was the only part to which anything was done, but the stork kept it in repair. This house was only fit to be looked at, not to be touched. I had to mind what I was about, said the wind. The cottage was allowed to stand for the sake of the stork's nest, and itself was only a scarecrow on the heath, but the Dean did not want to frighten away the stork, so the hovel was allowed to stand. The poor soul inside was allowed to live in it. She had the Egyptian bird to thank for that. Or wasn't it payment for once having pleaded for the nest of his wild black brother in the Borreby forest? Then, poor thing, she was just a child, a delicate poor hyacinth in a noble flower garden. Poor Anna Dorothy, she remembered it all. Ah, human beings can sigh as well as the wind when it sots through the Rushden reeds. Oh dear, no bells rang over the grave of Waldemar Daa. No schoolboys sang when the former lord of Borreby Castle was laid in his grave. Well, everything must have an end, even misery. Sister Ida became the wife of a peasant, and this was her father's sorest trial. His daughter's husband, a miserable serf, who might at any moment be ordered to punishment on the wooden horse by his lord. It is well that the sod covers him now, and you too, Ida. Ah yes, poor me, I still linger on, and thy mercy release me, O Christ. This was the prayer of Anna Dorothy, as she lay in the miserable hovel which was only left standing for the sake of the stork. I took charge of the boldest of the sisters, said the wind. She had clothes made to suit her manly disposition, and took a place as a lad with the skipper. Her words were few and looked stubborn, but she was willing enough at her work. But with all her will, she could not climb the rigging, so she blew her overboard before anyone discovered that she was a woman. Oh, so I blew her overboard before anyone discovered that she was a woman. And I fancy that was not as a bad deed of mine, said the wind. On such an Easter morning as that on which Waldemar Daw thought he had found the red gold, Fred heard from beneath the stork's nest a psalm echoing through the miserable walls. It was Anna Dorothy's last song. There was no window, only a hole in the wall. The sun rose in splendor and poured in upon her. Her eyes were glazed and her heart broken. This would have been so this morning, whether the sun had shone upon her or not. The stork kept a roof over her head until her death. I sang at her grave, said the wind, and I sang at her father's grave. I know where it is, and hers too, which is more than anyone else knows. The old order changeth, giving place to the new. The high road now only leads to cultivated fields, while peaceful graves are covered by busy traffic on the new road. Soon comes steam, with its rows of wagons behind it, rushing over the graves, forgotten, like the names upon them. Phew. Phew. Let us be gone. This is the story of Waldemar Daw and his daughters. Tell it better yourselves if you can, said the wind, as it veered round. Then it was gone. The end. And that is the end of the book. I thought we had a little bit more to go. Oh goodness, we're only at an hour and a half as well too. Let me see if I can bring up this other book. Or I wonder if we would be able to just end this for our reading for today, and then maybe we can switch to that game instead. But let's see. All right. This is the Gray Fairy book by Andrew Lang. Let's see how it actually starts off. Let's see if we'll actually start this or if we'll save it until next week. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, the first story in here is called Donkey Skin. So we'll see how long this goes, and then we'll stop at our break and see. Dum, 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 dum. All right. There was once upon a time a king who was so much beloved by his subjects that he thought himself the happiest monarch in the whole world, and he had everything his heart could desire. His palace was filled with the rarest of curiosities, and his gardens with the sweetest flowers, while in the marble stalls of his stables stood a row of milk-white Arabs with big brown eyes. Strangers who had heard of the marvels which the king had collected and made long journeys to see him were, however, surprised to find the most splendid stall of all occupied by a donkey with particularly large and drooping ears. It was a very fine donkey, but still, as far as they could tell, nothing so remarkable as to the accent for the care with which it was lodged, and they went away wondering, for they could not know that every night, when it was asleep, bushels of gold pieces tumbled out of its ears, which was picked up every morning by the attendants. After many years of prosperity, a sudden blow fell upon the king in the death of his wife, whom he loved dearly. But before she died, the queen, who had always thought first of his happiness, gathered all her strength and said to him, "Promise me one thing. You must marry again. I know for the good of your people, as well as for yourself. But do not set about it in a hurry. Wait until you have found a woman more beautiful and better formed than myself." "Oh, do not speak to me of marrying," sobbed the king. "Rather let me die with you." But the queen only smiled faintly and turned over on her pillow and died. For some months, the king's grief was great. Then gradually he began to get a little, to forget a little, and besides, his counselors were always urging him to seek another wife. And first he refused to listen to them, but by and by he allowed himself to be persuaded to think of it, only stipulated that the bride should be more beautiful and attractive than the late queen, according to the promise he had made her. Overjoyed at having obtained what they wanted, the counselors sent envoys far and wide to get portraits of all the most famous beauties of every country. The artists were very, very busy and did their best, but alas, nobody could even pretend that any of the ladies could compare for a moment with the late queen. At length one day, when he had turned away discouraged from the fresh collection of pictures, the king's eyes fell upon his adopted daughter, who had lived in the palace since she was a baby, and he saw that, if a woman existed on the whole earth more lovely than the queen, this was she. He at once made known what his wishes were, but the young girl, who was not at all ambitious, and had not the faintest desire to marry him, was filled with dismay and begged for time to think about it. That night, when everyone was asleep, she started in a little car drawn by a big sheep and went to consult her fairy godmother. "I know what you have come to tell me," said the fairy, when the maiden stepped out of the car. "And if you don't wish to marry him, I will show you how to avoid it. Ask him to give you a dress that exactly matches the sky. It will be impossible for him to get one, so you will be quite safe." The girl thanked the fairy and returned home again. The next morning, when her father, as she had always called him, came to see her, She told him that she could give him no answer until he presented her with a dress the color of the sky. The king, overjoyed at this answer, sent for all the choicest weavers and dressmakers in the kingdom, and commanded them to make a robe the color of the sky without an instant's delay, or he would cut off their heads at once. Dreadfully frightened at this threat, they all began to dye and cut and sew, and in 2 days they brought back the dress, which looked as if it had been cut straight out of the heavens. The poor girl was thunderstruck, but did not know what to do. So in the night she harnessed her sheep again, and went in search of her godmother. "The king is cleverer than I thought," said the fairy, "but tell him you must have a dress of moonbeams." And the next day, when the king summoned her into his presence, the girl told him what she wanted. "Madame, I can refuse you nothing," said he, and he ordered the dress to be made in 24 hours, or every man should be hanged. They set to work with all their might, and by dawn next day, the dress of moonbeams was laid across her bed. The girl, though she could not help admiring its beauty, began to cry, till the fairy, who heard her, came to her help. "Well, I could not have believed it of him," she said, "but ask for a dress of the sunshine, and I shall be surprised indeed if he manages that." The goddaughter did not feel much faith in the fairy after 2 previous failures, but not knowing what else to do, she told her father what she bid. The king made no difficulties about it, and even gave his finest rubies and diamonds to ornament the dress, which was so dazzling when finished that it could not be looked at save through smoked glasses. When the princess saw it, she pretended that the sight hurt her eyes, and retired to her room, where she found the fairy awaiting her, very much ashamed of herself. "There is only one thing to be done now," cried she. "You must demand skin of the ass he set such store by. It is from that donkey he obtains all his vast riches, and I am sure he will never give it to you." The princess was not so certain. However, she went to the king and told him she could never marry him till he had given her the ass's skin. The king was brought astonished and grieved at his new request, but he did not hesitate an instant. The ass was crucified, and the skin laid at the feet of the princess. The poor girl, seeing no escape from the fate she dreaded, wept afresh, and tore at her hair, when suddenly the fairy stood before her. "Take heart," she said. "All will now be well. Wrap yourself in the skin, and leave the palace as far as you can. I will look after you. Your dresses and your jewels shall follow you underground, and if you strike the earth whenever you need anything, you will have it at once. But go quickly, you have no time to lose." So the princess clothed herself in the ass's skin, and slipped from the palace without being seen by anyone. Directly she was missed there was a great hue and cry, and every corner, possible and impossible, was searched. Then the king sent out parties along all the roads, but the fairy threw her invisible mantle over the girl when they approached, and none of them could see her. The princess walked on a very long, long way, trying to find someone who would take her in and let her work for them. But though the cottagers whose houses she passed gave her food from charity, the ass skin was so dirty that they would not allow her to enter their houses, for her flight had been so hurried she had no time to clean it. tired and disheartened about her ill fortune, she was wandering one day past the gate of a farmyard, situated just outside of the walls of a large town, when she heard a voice calling to her. She turned and saw the farmer's wife standing among her turkeys and making signs for her to come in. "I want a girl to wash the dishes and feed the turkeys and clean out the pigsty," said the woman. "And to judge by your dirty clothes, you would not be too fine for the work." The girl accepted her offer with joy, and she was at once set to work in the corner of the kitchen, where all the farm servants came and made fun of her in the ass's skin in which she was wrapped. But by and by they got so used to the sight of it that it ceased to amuse them, and she worked so hard and so well that her mistress grew quite fond of her. And she was so clever at keeping sheep and herding turkeys that she would have thought that she had done nothing else during her whole life. One day, she was sitting on the banks of a stream, bewailing her wretched lot, when she suddenly caught sight of herself in the water. Her hair and part of her face were quite concealed by the ass's head, which was drawn right over like a hood, and the filthy matted skin covered her whole body. It was the first time that she had seen herself as other people saw her, and she was filled with shame at the spectacle. Then she threw off her disguise and jumped into the water, plunging in again and again till she was shone like ivory. When it was time to go back to the farm, she was forced to put the skin which disguised her, and now seemed more dirty than ever. But as she did so, she comforted herself with the thought that tomorrow was a holiday, and that she would be able for a few hours to forget that she was a farm girl and be a princess once more. So, at break of day, she stamped on the ground, and as the fairy had told her, and instantly the dress, like the sky, lay across her tiny bed. Her room was so small that there was no place for the train of her dress to spread itself out, but she pinned it up carefully when she combed her beautiful hair and piled it on top of her head, as she had always worn it. When she was done, she was so pleased with herself that she was determined never to let a chance pass of putting on her splendid clothes, even if she had to wear them in the fields, with no one to admire her but the sheep and turkeys. Now the farm was a royal farm, and one holiday, when Donkey Skin, as they had nicknamed the princess, had locked the door of her room and clothed herself in dresses of sunshine, the king's son rode through the gate and asked if he might come and rest himself a little after hunting. Some food and milk were set before him in the garden, and when he felt rested, he got up and began to explore the house, which was famous throughout the whole kingdom for its age and beauty. He opened one door after another, admiring the old rooms, when he came to a handle that he could not turn. He stopped, he stooped and peeped through the keyhole to see what was inside, and was greatly astonished at the beholding of a beautiful girl, clad in a dress so dazzling that he could hardly look at it. The dark gallery seemed even darker than ever as he turned away, but he went back to the kitchen and inquired who slept in the room at the end of the passage. The scullery maid, they told him, whom The scullery maid, they told him, who everybody laughed at and called Donkey Skin. And though he perceived there was some strange mystery about this, He saw quite clearly that there was nothing to be gained by asking any more questions. So he rode back to the palace, his head filled with the vision that he had seen through the keyhole. All night long he tossed about, and awoke the next morning in a high fever. The queen, who had no other child, and lived in a state of perpetual anxiety about this one, at once gave him up for lost, and indeed his sudden illness puzzled the greatest doctors, who tried the usual remedies in vain. At last, they told the queen that the secret sorrow must be at the bottom of all of this, and she threw herself on her knees beside her son's bed and implored him to confide his troubles to her. If it was an ambition to be king, his father would gladly resign the cares of his throne, or of his crown, and suffer him to reign in his stead. Or, if it was love, everything should be sacrificed to get him the wife that he desired, even if she was the daughter of a king with whom the country was at war at present. "Madame," replied the prince, whose weakness would hardly allow him to speak, do not think me so unnatural as to wish to deprive my father of his crown. As long as he lives, I shall remain the most faithful of his subjects. And as to the princesses you speak of, I have seen none that should care for as a wife, though I would always obey your wishes, whatever it might cost me." "Oh, my son," cried she, "we will do anything in the world to save your life, and ours too, for if you die, we shall die also." "Well then," replied the prince, "I will tell you the only thing that will cure me, a cake made by the hand of Donkey Skin." "Donkey Skin?" exclaimed the queen, who thought her son had gone mad. "And who or what is that?" "Madame," answered one of the attendants present, who had been with the prince at the farm. "Donkey Skin is, next to the wolf, the most disgusting creature on the farm of the earth. She is a girl who wears a black, greasy skin and lives at your farmer's as a hen wife." "Never mind," said the queen. "My son seems to have eaten some of her pastry. It is the whim of a sick man, no doubt, but send at once and let her bake a cake." Oh. The attendants bowed and ordered a page to ride with the message. Now it is by no means certain that Donkey Skin had not caught a glimpse of the prince, either when his eyes looked through the keyhole, or else from her little window, which was over the road. But whether she had actually seen him, or only heard him spoken of, directly she received the queen's command, she flung off the dirty skin, washed herself from head to toe, and put on a skirt and bodice of shining silver. Then, locking herself in her room, she took the richest creams, the finest flour, and the freshest eggs of the garden, and set about making her cake. As she was stirring the mixture in the saucepan, a ring that she sometimes wore in secret slipped from her finger and fell into the dough. Perhaps Donkey Skin saw it, or perhaps she did not. But anyway, she went on stirring, and soon the cake was ready to put in the oven. When it was nice and brown, she took off her dress and put on her dirty skin, and gave the cake to the page, asking at the same time for the news of the prince. But the page turned his head aside, and would not even condescend to answer. The page rode like the wind, and as soon as he arrived at the palace, he snatched up a silver tray and hastened to present the cake to the prince. The sick man began to eat it so fast that the doctors thought he would choke, and indeed, he very nearly did, for the ring was in one of the bites, which he broke off, though he managed to extract it from his mouth without anyone seeing him. The moment the prince was left alone, he drew the ring from under his pillow and kissed it 1,000 times. Then he set his mind to find how he was to see the owner, for even he did not dare to confess that he had only beheld the donkey skin through a keyhole, lest they should laugh at his sudden passion. All this worry brought back the fever, which the arrival of the cakes had diminished for the time, and the doctors, not knowing what else to say, informed the queen that her son was simply dying of love. The queen, stricken with horror, rushed into the king's presence with the news, and together they hastened to their son's bedside. "My boy, my dear boy," cried the king, "who is it that you want to marry? We will give her to you for a bride, even if she is the humblest of our slaves. What is there in the world, or what is there in the whole world, that we would not do for you?" The prince, moved to tears at these words, drew the ring, which was an emerald of the purest water, from under his pillow. "Oh, dear father and mother, let this be proof that she is whom I love is no peasant girl. The finger which that ring fits has never been thickened by hard work, but be her condition what it may, I will marry no other." The king and queen examined the tiny ring very closely and agreed with their son that the wearer could not be a mere farm girl. Then the king went out and ordered heralds and trumpeters to go through the town, summoning every maiden to the palace, and she whom the ring fitted would someday be the queen. First came all the princesses, then all the duchesses' daughters, and so on in proper order, but not one of them could slip the ring over the tip of her finger, and to the great joy of the prince, whose excitement was fast curing. At last, when the high-born damsels had filled, the shop girls and chambermaids took their turns, but no one better fortune. "Call in the scullens and the shepherdesses," commanded the prince, for the sight of their red fat fingers satisfied everybody. There is not a woman left, your highness," said the chamberlain, but the prince waved him aside. "Have you sent for Donkey Skin, who made the cake for me?" asked he, and the courtiers began to laugh, and replied that they would not have dared to introduce so dirty a creature into the palace. "Let someone go for her at once," ordered the king. "I commanded the presence of every maiden, high or low, and I meant it." The princess had heard the trumpets and the proclamations, and knew quite well that her ring was at the bottom of it all. She, too, had fallen in love with the prince, and the brief glimpse that she had of him trembled with fear lest someone else's finger might be as small as her own. When, therefore, the messenger from the palace rode up to the gate, she was nearby herself with delight. Hoping at the time for such a summons, she had dressed herself with great care, putting on the garment of moonlight, whose skirt was scattered over the emeralds. But when they began calling to her to come back, she hesitantly covered herself with the donkey skin and announced she was ready to present herself before his highness. She was taken straight into the hall, where the prince was awaiting her, but at the sight of the donkey skin his heart sank. Had he been mistaken after all? "Are you the girl?" he said, turning his eyes away as he spoke. "Are you the girl who has a room in the furthest corner of the inner court of the farmyard?" "Yes, my lord, I am," answered she. Hold out your hand then, continued the prince, feeling that he must keep his word, whatever the cost. And, to the astonishment of everyone present, a little hand, white and delicate, came from beneath the black and dirty skin. The ring slipped on with the utmost ease, and, as it did, the skin fell to the ground, disclosing a figure of such beauty that the prince, weak as he was, fell on his knees before her, while the king and the queen joined their prayers to his. Indeed, their welcome was so warm, and their caresses so bewildering, that the princess hardly knew how to find words to reply. When the ceiling of the halls opened, and the fairy godmother appeared, seated in a car made entirely of white lilac. In a few words, she explained the history of the princess and how she had came to be there, and, without losing a moment, preparations to the most magnificent kind were made for the wedding. The kings of every country on the earth were invited, including, of course, the princess's adopted father, who by this time had married a widow, and not one refused. But what a strange assembly it was! Each monarch traveled in the way he thought most impressive, and some came borne in litters. Others had carriages of every shape and kind, while the rest were mounted on elephants, tigers, and even upon eagles. So splendid a wedding had never been seen before, and when it was over, the king announced that it was to be followed by the coronation, for he and the queen were tired of reigning, and the young couple must take their place. The rejoicing lasted for 3 whole months. Then the new sovereigns settled down on to govern their kingdom, and made themselves so much beloved by their subjects that when they died 100 years later, each man mourned them as his own father and mother. From Le Cabinet de Fils. The end. And that puts us at about 2 hours, so I think we'll stop there just to save my voice. And I think we will take a short switch over break, and then I want to see if we can play that new game because it's really cute. So I think I can do. I've never tested it before, but I think I can do 2 streams back to it. We're gonna test out this theory and see. So, for now, thank you, my dears. And for those who come back to listen to the VOD, I'm sorry for any disruptions. And I hope that it still is a nice listen for your reading pleasure. So let's get ready to play this game. I'm really excited. It looks really cute. So yeah, we'll switch over and I will be back momentarily. Thank you for joining the reading, and we will go back to the Gray Fairy book next Wednesday. I like the flow of it. It reads very well, and it's very nice, I think, for bedtime reading. So yeah, thank you. For now, sweet dreams. And hopefully I will join you momentarily. If not, we'll probably just come back this evening. All right, my dears.